Hey, this is Eben Ray, Project Next on KPFK Radio, hanging out with Winston Shrout. Winston Shrout, Solutions in Commerce, coming up June 21st through the 23rd in lovely Portland, Oregon, is the Winston Shrout Solution in Commerce members event. This is the time when all of you dedicated genies from around the world are going to convene for an intensive workshop with Winston Shrout. Let's bring him on the line and ask him about this year's members event and what to look forward to. Hi, Mr. Shrout. Welcome to the airwaves of the Universal Communication Network around Solutions in Commerce. So glad to speak with you again.
Well, good to talk to you again. It's always a pleasure.
Fantastic, sir. I know that you are traveling far and wide, bringing the goodness of what it is to have control over your lives and sovereignty. But there are individuals that are very dedicated, that have become a part of your gardeners, let's say, your garden members. And so you are having a special members event coming up June 21st to 23rd. What are these member events about? How do they differ from your regular lectures?
Well, some years ago, we decided to organize, what you might call a continuous clientele who were interested, perhaps in you going a little bit deeper into things, and so we organized what we call the Gardening with Winston, kind of a private club in a certain sense, but for the sake of continuity, for students. Then we try to assemble them in such a way that that they can have more access to me, and also to take them to just a little bit higher understanding of some of the concepts that we deal with. So these what we call members events are for the purpose of assembling folks together. Those who have participated in the gardening program, and then perhaps digging in just a little bit deeper for a little bit deeper understanding, so that our upcoming event is in that nature.
And so it is a weekend, June 21st through the 23rd. What are your days? What are your days like there? What is the itinerary for this intensive?
Well, I've basically put out 6 areas for a little bit deeper understanding, and I've basically titled those 6 areas as assessment, depositions, direct versus indirect, also the concept of informa pauperis, recognizing the fiction, and we might go into just a little bit of quantum physics on that one. And then the 6th item that we want to dig a little bit deeper into is warrants. And that's been an interesting topic over the years for people to deal with. So anyway, in those particular areas, and some of those areas overlap to a certain extent. But anyway, those are the general areas that we'll be covering at that time.
Well, I like that last topic, warrants, because there are some I'd like to serve a couple of these public officials with.
Well, as always, I always look at everything that goes on in our present situations, the court system, all these kind of things. I always interpret things in a commercial way, and so people may not be aware that a warrant is it should be a negotiable instrument, put it that way. But as we find out, most of these warrants are not negotiable yet, because the parties who issue the warrants have not done the foundational work in order to make the warrant good. I think perhaps I've told this story, but maybe I'll just tell it again. so that people can see in this particular area what I'm talking about. And that is some years ago when I was working over in Nevada, I became unemployed, and so I took advantage of my unemployment insurance. And so I filed a claim, and then I was expecting a check, but what they sent to me from the unemployment insurance people was a warrant. Now, that really caused me to scratch my head. Well, back in those days, certainly I didn't understand what I do now. But anyway, so I went into an investigation to see exactly what was going on. So I took this warrant to the bank, and I asked to speak to the bank manager. And so I said, what is this? And he looked at it and said, well, that's a warrant. I said, is it a check? He said, no, it's not a check. I said, well, will you cash it for me? He said, I will as a courtesy.
Whoa.
Now I'm starting to think, because I know that a draft is a demand instrument. But now he's saying that he's going to exchange this warrant for cash as a courtesy. And so I asked him to explain just exactly what that meant. He said, it goes like this. He says, what we do at the bank with these warrants, when they come in, said we cash them or deposit them basically on a good faith basis. And he says every so often, perhaps quarterly or whatever, he says we gather all these warrants up, and then we present them to the state. He said at the end of every year, or at the beginning, actually, of the state legislature, the state legislature has to pass a bond to pay the warrants.
Wow.
So I got a real good education pretty quick on what a warrant is. And in the case of the warrant that was sent to me, basically it was a check kite. In other words, they had sent me an instrument on my insurance claim that was not redeemable, except that the banker would do it as a courtesy. Now, so let's look at perhaps the situation that we find with warrants that are served by law enforcement personnel upon someone, and analyze, just exactly what it is that we're looking at. Now, and so as we get into the seminar and dig into just a little bit, then we're going to discuss what is necessary to accompany a warrant in order to make the warrant itself a negotiable instrument and not a check kite. And the answer to that is that the warrant must be accompanied by an affidavit. If it is not, it is a worthless piece of paper.
Fascinating. Absolutely fascinating.
Yeah, it is. When you start looking at everything, from the viewpoint of commerce, the negotiable instrument law, and all those kind of things, that it takes some of the mystery out of what we're involved in here.
All comes down to that fiat currency cash, does it?
Yeah. See, this is one of the things over the years, that I've been trying to stress is that all of our operations in the public comes right down to the concepts of commerce, and certainly, we've looked at the UCC, we've looked at the negotiable instruments law, and all these kind of things to analyze what's really going on, and without if people don't actually take that point of view and understand what it is they're actually dealing with, then basically, the people generally are simply in a confused state. So we try to straighten it out a little bit for them.
And so, for folks to be a part of the members' event, can somebody sign up that weekend, even that Friday, to become a member and come to your June 21st event?
I believe you can check with the office on that. I don't do administration. I'm just the talking head. And so if they would call the office and speak to the ladies there, Melissa or Misty, they could answer that question. But I would suspect that probably the answer may be yes. I can't say for sure.
Right. And of your members, what is the average length they have been studying?
Wow, I really couldn't say. What we have done, what we do on a bi-monthly basis is that we have a conference call, whereas the members submit questions that are pertinent to their particular circumstances, as time goes on. Now, we have archived all of those questions that have come in since we started, this program. And then what the ladies at the office have done is they basically have created a search engine that I think utilizes keywords. So let's say somebody, joined the membership, today. If that's possible, I think it is. Anyway, somebody joined the program today. They could go back and search questions and answers, for perhaps the last 4 years. And we've had a lot of interesting questions come in, and sometimes I get stretched pretty hard to answer some of those things, but I give it my best shot. But anyway, there are certainly many advantages to being in such a program. And so as far as the present membership and so forth, I can't, I have no way of knowing, how long they've been with it or anything like that. But we have, like I mentioned, archived all of these questions that come in on these conference calls and tried to make them as readily available as possible. So that's a good thing.
That is a good thing. And the website is www.WSSIC-Winston-Shrout-SolutionsInCommerce.com. And the phone number, what phone number should they call for this, sir?
The phone number they should call would be on the website, but I'll just give it. Perhaps if they would call 503-538-7100. Yeah, that number will go through.
538-7100.
Correct.
That is brilliant, sir. Do you find, do you get feedback from their members that when they are dealing with what poses as authorities and they start speaking to them from terms of the private side to a public person or a public institution, does the dialogue go smoothly? Does the public institutions understand that people have, in a sense, broken this code and have a good understanding?
Well, I'll have to say that it basically depends on the level of knowledge of the public official you're dealing with. Now, for instance, in a court situation, we have many different levels of court. The lowest level perhaps being the magistrate court, right, such as traffic court.
Yes.
And magistrate courts are not even staffed by attorneys.
Right.
And so many of the magistrates know relatively little about the law or about commerce or all the kind of things. And so as you go up the chain of command, you go into what we would call the first level of a state court, which would be, for instance, some places it's called district court, some places it's called superior court. But anyways, the first level court that you would come to after the magistrate court, and then certainly the ones who staff those level of courts certainly know more than the magistrate courts do. And then as you go on up the chain of command, and certainly when you get into the federal system and so forth, the personnel are much better trained. And so when you go in to some of these circumstances and situations, in many instances, it's important to realize just exactly who it is you're talking to. And so on one occasion, you may make a statement that makes perfectly good sense, and you have no problem with it, with the judge or whatever. In other circumstances, you might go in and say something, and the fellow sitting up front would just be scratching his head trying to figure out what in the world are you talking about. So, again, at each level, the personnel are trained to a certain level, and so you have to realize that. And if you get into a circumstance, where it's obvious that you're talking to someone who doesn't understand, then you might have to explain it, or you might have to write a memorandum of law. You might have to come up with points and authorities and all those kind of things, perhaps demonstrating some of the maxims of law, the maxims of commerce, and so forth. I had a friend. I got a lot of friends that seem to be in prison. Anyway, years ago, I had a friend that was in prison, in federal prison camp. And anyway, one of the other fellows who was there with him was actually a state judge. had been a state judge. And he had left the bench and got involved in some kind of commercial securities or something, and got thrown in the slammer for it. But in any event, my friend was talking to this ex-judge about this problem. And he was trying to explain some things to this fellow because my friend was very knowledgeable. And so he was trying to explain some things to this ex-judge, and he was sitting there scratching his head. He said, I don't have any idea what you're talking about. He said, let me explain to you, what we do when something comes into court. If we don't understand it, we kick it out.
Yes. That's right.
He said, we've seen that happen a lot.
Yes.
Anyway, he says it's kind of like a cookie cutter situation. He says if something comes in that fits into our cookie cutter, so we'll deal with it. He said, but if it don't fit, he said, we just kick it out. And so then you got to go appealing and do all kinds of crazy things, and so we have these circumstances. And I'll have to tell you that the community of people who are self-taught, and we have some people who have researched, who have studied, and probably they could hold their own with any justice of the United States Supreme Court as far as their knowledge,
wow,
their level of understanding. And so when those folks go into some of these lower courts, they simply have to educate the personnel they're dealing with, because they are not trained to the level of these people that come into the courts. And so we have these situations and so forth, and you just have to deal with it.
Well, it's interesting in learning more about the law that judges are supposed to be open to whoever is standing, who has passed the bar and is standing before, the bench. And they're supposed to be open to be able to learn the information to render the objective appeal. But I've had judges say to me, with whatever information I'm bringing, well, my authorities obviously don't match your authorities. And so I really don't know where this judge was coming from. But there is only a single authority, isn't there, in the land? And isn't everybody supposed to be?
Yes.
Yes.
The authority is vested in what is known as a court of conscience. Now, the court of conscience comes from people. It does not come from a set of law books. It does not come from the legislature. But the ultimate judge, the ultimate judgment, is the result of the court of conscience.
And, at the end of it all, Winston, at the end of it all, what is your hopes? You have been gardening, you have been educating, you have been growing yourself, I guess constantly building upon the wisdom that you have over these decades. At the end of it, what do you see this community of gardeners, this community of educated individuals, what would you wish for them? What would you wish for the world?
Well, we would wish for the world that people would follow the golden rule. And if people would do that, that we would have no need for any court at all.
Yes.
And so as people live their life, and as they deal with their neighbors, as they deal with the people in their communities and so forth, if people would follow that golden rule, as it were, that we would have no need for a court. And so we put the whole system out of business if people would simply start to deal justly one with another. And that would be the hope and desire, that I would have, certainly. And I think that would, probably be a good thing to work toward.
And the way that someone is able to get that from your education is to get a real sense of who they are.
Yeah. As we've talked about in the past, Eben, we've talked about a little bit about, what we call ascension and all those kind of things, and self-realization.
Yes.
And I think that, far too many people are kind of in the fog when it comes to trying to determine who and what they are. And so we would certainly encourage people to come to a level of self-realization, and that would greatly, assist them in all the things that they do.
Well, Winston, this time, of course, always flies by. I know you are super busy getting all geared up for June 21st through the 23rd in Portland, Oregon, the members event, a very special, a lovely meeting of all the minds that are dedicating themselves to a deeper understanding of what you have been teaching. Thank you, sir. Congratulations on all that you do. And any parting statement for those that are thinking about becoming students and getting deeper into this study?
Well, way back in the early formation of this country, every man was his own lawyer. Every man was required to know the law. And so, certainly in our day and time with our busy schedules and so forth, a lot of times we don't consider that until we're faced with a circumstance. And so, like the old saying goes, an ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure. And so it certainly would behoove all of us to investigate these things. Hopefully we wouldn't have to use them for ourselves or whatnot, but certainly, an ounce of study is worth several pounds of ketchup